Welcome to the Hardwood Time Capsule podcast presented by Callaway Golf. This episode features an Australian Opal who is the all-time WNBL leading rebounder and second for all-time leading points. It has been a truly remarkable journey from a town of only 600 people to playing in the WNBA. We learn about her journey and how she continues to make a difference in women's sport in her current professional role. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rachael Sporn. Rachael Sporn, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Andrew.
How you going?
Really well, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to this. I think, obviously, excuse me, we're going to go, obviously, over your career, but sort of what's been behind everything you've done, because you've obviously really kicked on to many other things. And that's really what this podcast has been about the whole time, is digging in more behind the human side of our former players and sort of looking at what drives them and what's done that. But what we'll start with is the same we start every episode with is, where are you now? Where do we find you? And what are you up to these days?
Yes, well, I've jumped to a different sporting code. So last year I had the opportunity to start with a new expansion team in the AFLW with Port Adelaide. It was an interesting move because I'd been a Crows ambassador for 21 years.
Yeah, right.
So probably 50% of my friends love me more and 50% were pretty disappointed with me. But it's been great. So I'm operations manager with the women's team, and it was a challenging year last year because obviously starting from scratch, having to put everything into place and suddenly going from, I guess, being around, 12 teammates to having 30 players on the list and having to get to know all their names all at the same time. But it's been amazing. Obviously, AFLW is very well resourced. And at the moment, obviously in season, round 4 coming up, and really enjoying the role and I guess the challenges of what it brings. But being around a female elite sporting environment is what warms my heart the most, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I noticed you guys actually had a really good come from behind win last Sunday against the Saints, so that was good.
We needed that.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's an expansion team, and obviously got Aaron Phillips and some other players and those sort of things, and you're growing something there. In terms of your role, do you have a whole team around you? Because as you said, it's a much bigger role than obviously managing or being operations for a 10-player team as opposed to 20 plus.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great because when I first started, I had the men's team to certainly lean on with their resources, their knowledge and their own staff. So I shadowed them for a while to sort of understand what was required. And then, head of AFLW is my very good friend, Juliet Haslam. So we work very closely together. And so we have actually 7 females in sort of our leadership roles in different positions. And we work really well together and help each other, because it was a lot of last year you don't know what you don't know. So you weren't sure what was going to come. And so that's why season 2 has been really nice, because you do know what's coming. And we're able to get much more organised because they brought the season forward on us by 3 months last year. So that made it even more challenging. So it was nice to have a full off-season, pre-season, and really get ready. So it's been, our first 2 rounds were tough because it was against Adelaide and Brisbane, but as you mentioned, the win against St Kilda was great. Got Geelong coming up, and when it's only 10 rounds, you sort of need to get those wins on the board to stay competitive.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, you can do everything from marketing to getting systems in place, but the same as in any sport, nothing works as well as wins.
That's exactly right. Yes. Oh my gosh, it made the trip so much happier, and getting on the plane, we're all up and about. So no, it totally changes the dynamics getting a win.
No, fantastic. Look, what I want to do is come back to that at some point in terms of sort of where you are now, but we're going to sort of loop the whole way around. Obviously, all of our listeners are crazy basketball fans, and a lot of them actually former players themselves in NBL and WNBL. So we're going to sort of go back to where it all started and sort of see, I guess, what makes you up, because I think as we sort of loop back around to this area, I want to, when I was preparing for this interview with you, I listened to a great quote from actually Denzel Washington, the actor, and he said, aspire not to make a living, but aspire to make a difference. And when I look at all the things you've done, and not to pump your tires up too much, but when we look at foundations and those sort of things you've happened, and then helping women in sport, that sort of really resonated with me in terms of what you value and getting the best out of other people. So let's go all the way back to where it started, to sort of fill the listeners in, because we all know you had a great career for the Adelaide Lightning, were a great player for the Opals, but how did you even get into the sport? Were you a real little tacker? It was out in country Victoria, was it not?
Yes. So thankfully, my mum was a really great sportswoman. And so we're talking about a very small town, 6 hours from Melbourne, called Murrayville, with only a population of 300 people. We didn't have indoor gyms. So I played basketball on outdoor court, the same court that I would play netball on. Basketball wasn't introduced into Murrayville until the year I was born in 1968, and a school teacher from another town from my own came and taught mum and others how to play. And so when I was 9, I started playing because there was no junior grades. So I had to wait till I was 9, and I was playing in the B grade with adults. And it was the only time I was the shortest player on any team I've been involved with. And if I was lucky, I'd get 5 minutes at the end of the game. But by the age of 12, I had a growth spurt. So I started playing A grade with mum. And what's really nice, I guess, in the country is that you do tend to play with your parents, and we won 5 premierships together. Our team was called the Shadows. We wore netball skirts with a gold singlet. And I guess I grew up we didn't really have any offenses. We didn't play man-to-man D, you just played zone, just walked the ball up the floor. And so my basketball fitness, when I first moved to Adelaide, obviously years later, I got a bit of a rude shock. I wasn't very fit. So, but thankfully I was tall, Andrew. So, and mum and dad, athletically gifted because of mum and dad. And so that was my base. That was athletic. I was tall. I was keen. I had an amazing desire. So I guess that sort of set me up. And I loved netball as much as basketball. But I guess the decision was made for me down the track when I was seen playing in an association game in a town called Bordertown by West Adelaide Scout. So she went back to Adelaide and told them there's this tall, skinny girl called Rachael who you should recruit. So coaches drove from Adelaide, it's 2.5 hour drive, and wanted me to come to Adelaide when I was in year 12 to do go to school and start playing in their under 20 comp. But it was like there was no way I was going to leave home in my most important year. So mum would drive me to Adelaide once a month to take part in tall girl clinics. That's what they were called. Right. So that was my first foray into specialist coaching. Because I think my growing up in Murrayville, we never used your left hand. You were never told to, never shot with my left, never dribbled with my left. So you can imagine. So
what's sorry to interrupt, but it's sort of to give the listeners a bit of a guide of where Murrayville is. What would be the next biggest town around there?
So probably Mildura. Right. So 2 hours north is Mildura. So we're on right the SA Vic border, surrounded by mallee and desert. Big 4-wheel driving country. Yeah.
So a lot of the guests that we've had on previously, I guess around sort of 15, 16, they're playing, if they're not already at the AIS, then they're playing nationals and getting looked at and things like that. Was there a Vic country team then, or
no? Well, there would have been, but they didn't know about me. So isolated. There wasn't really the NITP sort of talent programs where they were scouting. So it was really only because I was seen playing by West Adelaide, Scout, that I guess basketball became my journey. I'm so thankful for that. So I only played 1 year of state basketball under 20s, 1 year. That was it. So my first year in Adelaide was hard because I realised I wasn't fit. My skill level was not where it needed to be. I was a bit homesick, but I'm so grateful that obviously I stuck at it and realised I love the game so much. And at that point, because I didn't really have any basketball role models, because growing up in Murrayville, we only had ABC TV. There was no women's team sport ever on TV. So I just grew up I wanted to be a sprinter like Raylene Boyle. I wanted to go to the Olympics as a track and field athlete. So I had that goal, but not in basketball. So pretty amazing, that I did get to be an Olympian, but not in an individual sport, but the wonderful game of basketball.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope you let the players of Port Adelaide know that. I couldn't imagine them just having ABC only, no phone, no laptop, no.
I know.
What would they do?
I know. That's why I spent a lot of time outside, Andrew. It wasn't, but that it's a pretty idyllic upbringing too. My dad was a builder, but my granddad was across the road. Was a farmer, so pretty awesome upbringing with animals because I'm a massive animal lover. So yeah, it was. I never sort of felt, I guess, disadvantaged being in the country. I did have the chance to go to the AIS when I was 19 in my second year in Adelaide, but the coach at the time didn't really encourage it. And then I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I can go to Canberra. I'll be even more homesick. But in hindsight, I wished I had gone for 12 months so that I could have really worked on my game to accelerate my progress even a little bit more.
Yeah. So was it sort of 19, or was it earlier that you thought like I could really make a go of this, like being a professional?
Probably not so much being a professional then, because none of us were getting any remuneration for playing. It was purely for the love of it. But because I went straight into the WNBL, very lucky when I came here in Adelaide, because we had West Adelaide, North Adelaide and Noarlunga, 3 WNBL teams. Whereas if I came to, back then and just one team like Lightning now, I doubt whether I would have got my chance to debut in the WNBL in my first year. So very grateful for that opportunity. And so once I started playing the WNBL, obviously knew about the Australian team and playing against other Opals at the time. It's like, wow, this is incredible. So yeah, as I improved, and then I watched them play in the Seoul Olympics when they came fourth, and that was amazing. So yeah, started to have the dream of being an Opal.
Yeah. So when you first went, was that with West Adelaide in 1990 when you won a premiership?
So North Adelaide in 1990,
North
and
Adelaide,
then, Lightning was formed in 1993, and then amazing success with Jan Sterling at the helm from then on. Wonderful years with Lightning.
Yeah, and with that, just for listeners on that, so it was 94, 95, 96 and 98, I think. Yeah, won the championships there. Just to sort of fill in the gaps, obviously Jan was the coach. What were some of the other players you were playing with, just to sort of put the team together for?
Yeah, so Jan Sterling, I guess we had such a great reputation of having a wonderful program. So we would get some wonderful AIS recruits. So namely, Jo Hill was South Australian, but she came back, Carla Boyd, Jay Kingy. So they were our real 3 young recruits that would sort of form our future. And then you had the more senior players, Marina Moffa, Vicky Dowdy, that probably everyone knows, and Michelle Brogan was also with us. So yeah, we had a wonderful sort of group. And back then we had an amazing import called Trina Roberts, who was fantastic. She hated the bodysuit, as most Americans do, but she persevered, and she was she was probably one of our really most successful imports, because that not every team had an import back in the day, and Trina Roberts was really great. And I know before, and Rhonda Bates was another one who became Rhonda Corcoran, who was with Westies in the early days, and she obviously went to play for the Sydney Flames and everything. So yeah, the 90s, I think in basketball was amazing, because that was when we were sort of playing double headers with the men all over Australia.
Yeah.
And it was great. We never sort of saw ourselves as a curtain raiser, because we were getting really lots of people to come and watch us before the men played. And it was really nice having, I guess, that, the connection with the men's teams as well. It was a good time.
Yeah. And hopefully, situations like that occur in the future, whether it's AFLW or it's NBL and WNBL. Because those were great. When we had Christy on the podcast, that's where we started. In terms of, I was a Tigers fan, but my brother and I would go there earlier and watch Ray Tomlinson and the Tigers girls going at it, and that's when I first saw Christy. So those games were great. And you mentioned there that not every team had imports, but you didn't necessarily need them. I mean, a lot of the MVPs for the league were actually Australians, and obviously you won a couple of MVPs in the season, and then obviously a couple in the grand finals. And it wasn't like it is so much nowadays, where you, especially in the men's, you almost expect the season MVP to probably come from an American import or an Australian that's returning from the NBA or WNBL or something. So it was a really cool era. It was a different era. But yeah, it was really cool in that. In terms of, and probably a good time to mention as well, you are still the all-time rebounder of the WNBL. So it's going to take some catching as well. And I've got the figures down here for anyone wondering at home. That's 3,229 times you went and got the ball. So that's a lot. And then you also scored 5,823 points, second only to Susie Bakovic, who's just a flat-out scorer. So two pretty amazing scorers in terms of that. And I think the only current player in the top 10 is Kayla, and still would probably need to play another 4 or 5 seasons to catch both of you. So pretty impressive. And then obviously we'll touch on you played a lot of games for Australia. I think it was 303 or 304 or something like that. Like, that's a lot of games for your country. In terms of the opals these days, those sort of things, I asked Christy the same question. Would you be interested in, reconnecting, mentoring, helping out? Obviously, you've got a busy schedule at the moment, for bringing those sort of players in, because I think that's key for going forward. And the men's program obviously do it a lot with Luke Longley coming in and those sort of guys. Do you still stay interested in that sort of things?
Oh, absolutely. And even more so because my best friend, Sandy Rondello, who's the coach. So, and it's something that lovely that they did. I'm not sure if Christy mentioned it before the World Cup. Each player in the current Opals team had to reach out to a former Opal and just chat and connect. And so that was, I had Sarah Blitzarves, so that was really lovely. And we sort of have a new connection now because that happened. We chatted for about an hour. So there's really nice ways that you can still have that connection. And I think having the World Cup in Sydney was brilliant. When you have Oz 94 was amazing as well. And we had a reunion in Sydney, and I think there was 150 Opals all up from 1957 right through to current day. So that was just incredible.
That's awesome. So was that driven by like the Players Association, or is that?
Well, it was more so we had an organising committee. It was the alumni. So Michelle Timms, myself, Gail Henderson, we were on that, and Pat Micken. So we made Pat ended up making another documentary about the Opals history, and so. I love that when you host a World Cup, because you have sort of extra funding and then you have the opportunity to do more for your sport, and then hopefully that momentum continues once that event is over. And I think the Matilda effect is showing that as well, with how great it is hosting a big event for your sport, because it just highlights it and brings public attention to it. So that was really great for basketball in 2022.
Yeah, no, that was huge. And I guess then the challenge is, for everyone, I mean, you've been on both sides as a player and now an administrator, is the pressure, I guess, is then on to how do we keep this going and not just have it as a one-off event where, that was great. How do we, and you see now with the Matildas, I think they're moving one of their games from the Philippines to Sydney so that they can add an extra 40,000 fans, and just to keep that ball rolling is the next challenge. But it's exciting, and the way things are moving along. For the listeners out there that aren't already on it, definitely get into the She's Hoops program that Lauren and a few others are putting together, because they're really active. I like, there's one thing to obviously have a strategy, but like Lauren seems to be flying around the country every second day doing clinics, and from what she says, she doesn't even like flying, she hates it. So to put those things on and get get people doing that sort of stuff is fantastic. In terms of, we talk about you playing so many games for Australia. You went to 3 Olympics. What was it like when you reached that goal? Because we do talk to people on the podcast about when they've had something they've set their sights on for so long. There can often be a twofold feeling. There can be euphoria when you reach it, but then after you've reached a certain goal, there can be a real down period of what now? Is this the highest I ever feel in life, that I'm only, 25 years old potentially, and there can almost be depression. And we talk about that with some of the players feeling that post-retirement. They've gone from all this structure, all this, you've got to be at weights at this time, you've got to be at training at this time, you've got this commitment at this time. And then the day they retire, it's just fallen away. And, for lack of a better term, civilian life is like, well, what now? Because they may have done it or been at the AS since I was 15 and all they knew was hoops. So I guess my question to you, Rach, is when you got to the Olympics, was it all you thought it was going to be, your first experience? And I guess what kept you driving? Was it the want for a gold medal? What was it for you?
Well, for me, Atlanta was magical because we didn't qualify for Barcelona in 1992. So that's still one of the worst days in my life. I can still remember it so vividly when we lost to Czechoslovakia by 3 and it put us out because I was 24. I was ready to go to my first Olympic Games and had the Olympic dream since I was 8 when I'd watched Raelene Boyle in the Montreal Olympics. And, so the motivation after that disappointment was very high. Poor Robbie Cadee got the sack because obviously the coach always gets the blame. So Tom Ma came in. We went from the shorts and singlets to the bodysuit. That was a change. And we also got a new name because we weren't always the Opals, Andrew. I don't know if you know, we used to be called the Bloomers, which is the disaster.
No, I did not.
That rhymed with the Boomers. I don't know.
Oh, wow. That's true.
So thankfully the Opals is a beautiful name and has been sort of, I guess, on the lots of success, since those changes. So qualifying for Atlanta was so important, and to be there, incredible. And I guess it was pretty amazing for us all because we created history because we won our first bronze medal ever, men or women. So that was creating history and really bonded 12 of us together to achieve that. It was incredibly special. And I can never really divide as to say which my Olympics was favourite because they were all amazing. Because Atlanta, my first, a medal. Sydney, home Olympics. How do you top that? You can't. We're going to see that in Brisbane in 2032 just because all your family and friends can afford to come. It's so expensive to go offshore to Olympic Games. So to have so many of my closest friends and immediate family there supporting me was so special. And we won a silver. And then Athens was different again for me because I was a mum. My daughter was 2. And my role was different, coming off the bench, playing less minutes, probably the most relaxed I've been at the Olympic Games. But I understand what you're saying in that you work so hard to get to Olympics. It's the pinnacle of our sport and as an athlete, but it's also very stressful and it's probably a relief when it's over. You want to have a perfect 17 days at the Olympic Games. And I think after Athens, retirement was okay. I coped okay because I was already a mum. I wanted to have another child. I have my son as well, so I think because I'd also worked all through my career, basketball didn't define me totally. I had other outlets. So when I retired, I was okay, and it was good.
That's good to hear because I guess you're in a position now where you can, you're working with athletes that may face this in future years and having something to, something outside of basketball or it might be or football or it might be to continue working in football, but have something to go to. I think we had Dee Brogan on the podcast and obviously a great Port Adelaide player himself. but he was talking about, his theory was the importance of staying connected. Like the day you finish, stay connected to those teammates, whether it's in Olympic Games or a club level, stay connected with them, stay in touch. It doesn't have to be where you just go away and you just sit and reflect for the next 20, 30 years. Stay in touch, stay connected, stay exercising. What was the other thing you were saying? Yeah, just staying healthy. By the way, what's your routine? Because you look like you literally just stopped playing yesterday. Do you gym? Do you run? What do you do?
Well, I'm genetically gifted as well, because I obviously have a high metabolism.
Yeah.
No, I still exercise. I like walking up hills. I still do weights, walk my dog, and yeah, it's more just I'm pretty much physically active every day. But I don't want to ever join a gym. Done that. I know what to do, and yeah, it's funny. I don't have too much structure in that sense anymore, because I was so structured for so long. So I like having the flexibility of sort of doing what I want when I can. But yeah, no, it's just ingrained in me to always be physically active until I can't be, I guess.
Yeah. So when you did finish, sort of, obviously you mentioned you want to expand your family a little bit, and you were also doing work outside of basketball, so you had something else to go to. From what I understand, you had an education degree, is that right?
Yeah, it's quite funny, because I have a Bachelor of Education in Physical Education and Mathematics, but I've only done 2 relief day teaching. That's it. 2
Right.
relief days. I don't know. I think for me, I think I should have been a primary school teacher. I just think high school students can be little shits. mainly I think year 9. And I have my own, not so much my daughter, my own son, to know that. No, I don't know. I think when I was halfway through the course, I was like, I don't know if this is really me, because I love PE and maths at school. And I thought, yeah, PE maths teacher, that makes sense. But how do you know what you want to be when you're 17? So I think I don't regret at all going to uni, because it was a great way when I moved to Adelaide, to meet new friends, and also to combine my extra coaching that I needed. If I'd come and started a full-time job straight away, that would have been really difficult. So I don't regret. And HECS only came in my final year, so I got rid of the debt straight away. So, but again, going to uni for a PE teacher, it gives you amazing transferable skills into coaching and so many things, presenting skills. So I don't ever regret doing that.
I was going to ask you on that as well, because you, from an outside perspective, you've always come across as someone who's very composed, very mature, just very well presented. Do you think that was credited to your parents, or were you just always quite studious in school? What were you like at school? That sort of thing? I was
studious, but I was so shy, Andrew. I hated getting up in front of the class to speak. If I was ever presented with an award and had to make a speech, I was like, I just didn't want to do it. So, totally my sport, basketball, gave me that confidence. And it's mainly because, I guess, as soon as you're brought into a leadership role, certainly when I was made captain of Adelaide Lightning, which was a surprise in my second year in 94, I didn't see that coming. So that certainly, I guess, forced me in a way to get comfortable with guest speaking and just, being in front of people and presenting yourself well. So it was probably something that I just had to learn along the way. We had a little bit of media training with the WNBL, which was great. But yeah, when I look back at how shy I was to how comfortable I am now, it's quite an amazing step. And I totally, give that all to sport, giving me that confidence. And certainly being an Opal, you all have to be leaders when you're in an elite program like that as well. So I was very lucky that both the Lightning and the Opal program helped with that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point to touch on. I think for any of the listeners out there that might have children in the same situation. Sometimes, just putting them in environments where they're forced to grow a little bit, and that's not, well, forced probably isn't the word, but giving them the opportunity to grow, and that, because obviously the old argument, are you a born leader or can you develop into a leader, those sort of things. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. I think we've seen with that. There's yourself, and that's why I'm so appreciative you just mentioned that, how you can become a leader like that, because we see it in sporting teams all the time. The captain doesn't necessarily need to be the loudest person. It can be what they do out on the field. It can be how they behave, all these sort of things. Did you ever even get a tech foul in your 300 plus game? I was gonna say.
Yeah, two. I did. I remember I wasn't happy with a foul call, and I just bounced the ball really hard on the ground. And then another one in Canberra, I kicked the ball against the wall. So that was probably early in my career, and then I didn't get any more after that. And I never really ever back chatted to the refs, but they knew my body language was enough to let them know if I wasn't happy with the call. So
no, but that's good. I mean, that's a great maturity and a great poise that I think a leader sort of needs to have, because if they don't have it, then how are you going to, for lack of a better term, control those around you, or keep steady the ship when things are going wrong?
I wasn't a loud leader. I guess I always wanted my effort on the court to lead by example in that, but certainly try and bring the group together when required. But it was often, our point guard who would also can really contribute in those huddles. And that was something, and that was a learned behaviour, having to be more comfortable with talking more, communicating more, because again, growing up at home, none of us talked on the court. It was when I couldn't believe how much everyone talked on the court when I first moved to Adelaide. Everything, talking all the time, and we just didn't do that at home. So that was a learned behaviour that I had to to do and become better at, for sure.
Yeah, on that leadership front, do you ever see yourself going down a coaching route, or would you, or have you coached your kids? Would you entertain that, or are you happy being in administration?
Yeah, it's funny. I always say no coaching, no head coaching. I was assistant coach to my daughter Taya through most of her junior careers at district level with Forestville, and then after I retired for 6 years, when Chris Lucas was the coach for Lightning, he developed a Lightning Academy, and I lent my name to that academy, and I was a coach there for 6 years. So it was because we felt there was a gap sort of between probably for 16 to 20-year-olds. So it was like getting the best 20 female athletes into a program that was the feeder for Lightning. So so that was the 6 a.m. training, and it was wonderful because we had 8 coaches who volunteered their time. So we had amazing, ratio, and we were really able to give great individual attention to each player. So so I sort of enjoy that more, the individual work and small group work, than coaching itself. I find coaching so stressful, if we don't. And I'm so competitive that if we don't win, then I find it hard to move on quick enough, that it just ruins my whole week. So I don't think and that's why I admire Sandy. I say to Sandy all the time, she absolutely loves what she does. The pressure, oh my gosh, she's amazing. And she just embraces it and loves it, but that's not me.
No, and it's, you make a good point. Christy said the same thing, although she's now head coaching Keilor Thunder in the NBL 1. But she said on the podcast, she goes, I hope to head coach one day, but she goes, to be honest, it's not for everyone.
No.
And D-Mac said the same thing. He's head coached a few times as an interim coach in the NBL. And now he's just he's a well recruited assistant coach. And we use the example of Phil Handy in the NBA, is a skills and assistant coach for the LA Lakers, but he's one of the best coaches in the NBA, but has no desire to be a head coach, And I think but I think it is important, and this is just me putting my opinion out there, but I think it's important that, you know, players like yourself, and Susie's doing this, has done the same, is she's not interested in necessarily coaching, but where she went down to the Townsville Fire and, you know, helped some of the post players with some of their game, because the reality is, not that you owe anything to anyone, but I think when you've got so much skills, so much knowledge, the ability to fast track and problem solve for some of these players, maybe a weakness that they've got, or some issue that they're finding against certain defenses or whatever, for you to be able to come down and give back, even if it's, you know, a one-on-one here and there, or just a chat like you had with Sarah. You know, I think that sort of stuff is amazing, because that's the whole reason, you know, we have podcasts like this, is because everybody learns from shared experiences, I think, and getting those past players in. So that's great to hear that you have done a bit of that, and maybe the head coach gig isn't for you if you're not going to sleep for the next week after a loss.
And it's great to hear Susie's doing that, because when she was playing for Lightning, I actually took Susie and Abby Bishop for some drills as well. Gosh, that seems so long ago. But I think, I've done a lot of post work over the journey, because I think it's a little bit of a lost art, particularly because, you know, players now play so much front to the basket. So it's something that, and there still don't seem to be enough tall girls coming through. And it's hard, because, you know, when you are tall and athletic, you will be sort of scouted for other sports, and AFLW is a classic one, you know, looking for those taller players. So, yeah, but no, I admire anyone that wants to be a head coach, and, you know, you just have to look at the AFL as to how stressful it is, and I take my hat off to them, because it's like, wow, that's amazing that you have to have a thick skin when you're at that level.
Yeah, and talking about having a thick skin, I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to ask our next guest that we've got coming on as well, who's heavily in the Players Association, is you've got, as an administrator, I guess now these days, there's almost a pulling of the opposites in terms of the environment for players. So you've got, and I'll explain that in the sense that you've got a lot more discussion around mental health, around, you know, looking after the players, around social media and stuff like that around, and that's what this podcast is about as well, is showing the human side of players. And that's why we don't go into scoring and percentages and all that sort of stuff, is what are people like as humans. But then on the other side, as an administrator, you'd obviously have to be, or as a coach, players have never been used as products or objects more than they are now, in terms of, like, you can, even this season, they're starting the NBL Fantasy League, you know, where you can literally buy and sell players based on their performance, you know. So we've got this pulling of, let's treat them more as humans and look after them and not be trolls on the internet and all that sort of stuff. And then on the other side, not only do people go to games now to hope their team wins, but it's important that Erin Phillips gets 20 disposals. Yes. It's important that she gets 4 tackles, because if she doesn't, she's stuffed up my fantasy team for the week, and I'm going to go online and I'm going to say, you know, blah, blah, blah. I guess my question to you on that is, for us that aren't behind the scenes, is there much work that goes on, whether it's pre-season or during the season, in terms of training the players to deal with those pressures, especially if you've got an 18 or 19-year-old coming in and all of a sudden they're getting a lot of pressure on themselves, on them from fans, from stuff being direct message to them. Because I think people talk about the comments and the trolls and the stuff on posts, but some of these players that I've spoken to, they're actually getting like direct messages of horrible stuff. What's done sort of from a club, or maybe even like an AFLW have, I don't know, you'll be able to tell us, but like a welfare officer, what's the training there so players can deal with that sort of stuff?
Yeah, they have really great things in place, AFLW. So we have a sports psychologist, we have a mindset coach, and we also have our wonderful media manager who actually educates our players, and we'll have sessions specifically how to cope with social media. I'm so glad that social media wasn't around when I was playing, because it's just, and not every game of ours was telecast. There was one game a week. So you didn't have the pressure of, I have to play every week because my game is going to be broadcast every week. And it's just that more expectation you set on yourself, I suppose. So I think, the AFLW do it really well in that players have access, 24/7 to someone if they need to speak to them, and also to educate them. So it's really good points you make, because I don't know, even after the Port men lost, in straight sets in the finals, we're just flabbergasted at the comments by our own fans towards, the head coach. It's like, gosh, it's brutal. So you do have to, guess, I see water off a duck's back in ignoring those comments, because they're just anonymous people who think that they can just do that. And that's the awful side of social media. I know there's a lot of advantages to it as well, but it's horrible. The trolling is horrible.
Well, that's great to at least hear that there are a lot of resources being put towards that, because, like you said, it's from within, or not within the club, but like your own fans, can be very, very fast to turn on you, and it's very, very difficult. I mean, we see it now at the moment. Carlton are flying high, but you only need to go back 6 weeks ago, and they're calling for Michael Voss's head.
Yes.
And it's just brutal when it comes down to that. And I think we had a chat with Matt Shanahan on the podcast, and he coached Vic Metro under 18s. And we were talking about, there's these great groups that go around even filming like VJBL on a Friday night, under 16s, under 14s. So we're talking 12-year-old kids, 13-year-old kids. And they're putting up their highlights, which is fantastic. And they're making like these montages, and all the kids love it, and blah, blah, blah. But then you get friends of opposition players coming on, and they're just, clown faces, and, just the pressure and this is like young kids, and some of them, sometimes the videos are even mocking videos, like, missing a layup or open layup or airballing or something. And it's meant to be lighthearted, but how do you know how that's affecting? You've just put up a video and there's, 2,000 likes already on it, and this kid's in year 8 and got to go to school. And essentially you can't police that, because the reality is people can post what they want to post. But how do you look after the juniors? So I think that's, I guess where I'm getting with this is, it's a space where I think we might need to start the wellbeing stuff earlier than professional sport, and look at that as associations out there. And I think, is that something that you would like to do in the women's side of things? Because I think like the AFLW, do you guys have like your own academies of young girls coming through?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something that you could sort of touch on, because I think it's just something that you could end up missing out, not you specifically, but sports end up missing out on these great players because it just gets too much. And they could have been phenomenal players, but the mental pressure and those sort of things gets too much. And the reason I bring this up is because Susie and I had a great chat about it, and she's like, I just want everyone to be kinder, I guess, to each other, so those sort of things can flourish. And I guess, a long-winded way of getting to your opinion on this is that you're so composed and so measured and speak so well. How do you, I guess, instill that in a youngster? Can you capture that maturity you've got to because you can obviously compartmentalize that, where you go, look, like that's just an anonymous fan that's, I don't know, maybe had a bet on the game, or something like that. It's not a real reflection of who I am as a person. They don't know me. They don't know what I've put into it. They don't see me getting up at 6 a.m. 3 mornings a week to work on my shooting or kicking or whatever. How do you then teach that skill or that ability to a youngster? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but can it be taught, or do you just need to make sure that there's support there if they need to reach out?
It's a really interesting question, because the mental health space is huge. Growing up in this generation, and I think we've tried to address this so often, particularly with female sport, because the dropout rate for girls, once they get to 17, 18, 19 is awful, because you just have to see it with, for example, with basketball, when you have tryouts, under 16s, might be 80 girls, under 18s, 40 girls, under 20, 12 girls. So we're losing, and it's like, why do we keep losing girls to the sport? And I think, I don't know, it's a combination of so many things. It could be mental health, burnout, because I get frustrated with basketball because it's 12 months of the year, and I don't agree with that, because there's no time to re-energize, and no one really gets a break. And that's been something that's a whole nother subject or topic. And body image is a massive one with girls. Work becomes a priority, their education. I guess they feel, well, if I'm going to work, I can't afford to give that time to my sport. And I think a lot of girls are going to gyms and doing more individual things, which is great as well. But I think being part of a team is so important for life skills. As far as, I think it's really difficult, because I think support needs to come from your home, from your parents. Hopefully the coach can be well versed. I think really great if we could educate the coaches even more in this area, and then it's going to be really varying because of just the different personalities. Not a whole blanket approach isn't going to work for everyone. So it's huge, but how do we address it, Andrew? It is an interesting one. I don't have an answer, but you'd hope that it's going to keep getting looked at, by organisations, by the associations, and then they work out, okay, who do we need to educate to help the players?
Yeah, no, excuse me. I think, like you said, there's no one answer that's going to fix it all. But I think as long as we keep the conversation rolling and we stay aware of it, then you can sort of pick up on people's changes in behaviour and those sort of things. So thanks for giving your opinion on that, because I know it's a kind of deep topic, but I think it's one that's relevant in this day and age. And people like yourself are in positions where you can influence change to, sort of make a dent in the issue, if not, probably never going to be an issue that we can fix, because it is important to have things, like I mentioned, the Fantasy League before. It's going to be a massive thing for the game. It's going to get more fans. It's going to engage more people. It's going to be great for the promotion of the game, but it's also just, keeping in mind, the other side of it as well. Now, getting back to your playing career, we've got the deep stuff out of the way. Some of the other past players have talked about some of their most enjoyable years being overseas. Now, you didn't necessarily venture so much overseas. I think you played a little bit with the Detroit Shock in the WNBA. Did you ever go to Europe, though, or anything like that?
I only did a 3-month stint in Austria.
Right.
I think for me, I didn't want to miss the WNBL. I loved playing at home so much. And once we went to summer, that totally clashed, because when I went to Austria, we were still playing in winter. And then the WNBA was 3 seasons. So the WNBA was great because it was sort of short, sharp, shiny, beautiful weather. I know Europe was a bit more difficult, colder, a long time. And that just didn't, I don't know, with my body type as well, I don't know if playing in Europe would have suited me all that well. I just think I was happy to stay in the WNBL. I never missed a season. I missed one season because of my knee reconstruction. but otherwise I was pretty much here the whole time, and then fortunate enough to be in the WNBA for 3 seasons.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point you bring up, because the others had also brought that point up. I think Susie said, for instance, she didn't really enjoy the WNBA because she enjoyed Europe more because of, like you say, the style of play would suit certain players, and being more of a crash and bash sort of player, she loved it over there because you could get away with a bit more contact and those sort of things. So obviously it begs the question, if you're only playing WNBL, what were your off seasons made up of?
Well, because I guess with if I was just doing WNBL, and then the Opals program, you're sort of always having to stay fit because of that. So I can't really remember I reckon I would have 4 weeks off max in any of my off seasons. So I played state league. I probably finished playing state league 7 years before I retired. After I had my daughter Taya, I played 1 year just to get fit before Athens, which was great. So no, I never really had too long off season anyway because of the Opals commitment. So it was a really nice balance for me. WNBL mainly, WNBA for a few years, and obviously Opals was my number one priority.
No, that makes sense. And I guess it's a good way to look after your body as well, and not overload yourself too much.
Yeah, and I was very lucky, because before my knee reconstruction, I'd only missed 1 game in 14 years from an ankle sprain. So I was very lucky in that sense, and I wasn't good at watching. I hated being injured, so I really did want to look after my body. I'm still pretty lucky. I can't believe it's been 19 years since I retired, and I can still run. Not that I love running, but I can still run without any pain, and I don't go to bed at night with anything really aching. I know it's going to come. But at this point, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm still enjoying that.
No, that's fantastic. And I guess I do want to sort of hear from you some work you do with a foundation. I'll let you name that foundation. I think it's sort of, from what I've read, it's sort of close to your family's heart, but it made a big impact because it's probably a combination of your career and things you've done in terms of giving back to the community. You did receive an Order of Australia medal in 2015, which is a massive honour. Do you want to sort of shine the light on that foundation and the work that you did there?
Do you mean the melanoma?
Yeah.
So I was an ambassador initially for them. They just asked would I be an ambassador, but there wasn't a whole lot to do because they didn't really have a profile. So then they asked would I like to work for the Australian Melanoma Research Foundation. So I had a passion in this area because my grandma passed away from melanoma. And I also, being a mum, wanted to educate my children more than mum and dad knew to educate us, because, all we did in summer was get burnt on purpose so that we'd get brown and peel, and not knowing the damage that we were doing. So, I was with AMRF for 6 years, and it was an incredibly rewarding role because, and also very, I guess, sort of pulled at the heartstrings, because you're dealing with families who had, losing their children or their partner or their parents to melanoma. So you had to be very sensitive in that role. We started up the Melanoma March here in Adelaide, which is a national, we hosted here. So that was wonderful fundraiser for us. And so the not-for-profit space is a difficult one, Andrew, because you do tend to get a little bit burnt out, and I'm not great at asking for things, and you need to be a bit of a salesperson when you're fundraising. So I sort of, after 6 years, it's like, I need to go to something else because I'm getting pretty burnt out here. But the charity space is an amazing place to work. And I guess it gave me a great sense of purpose. That was the really rewarding part, is that you knew we were genuinely helping, to maybe save lives with our research and everything. So loved my time there.
And that's I guess what I was getting at earlier with the aspiring to make a difference, because that's what those sort of roles are all about. Do you see yourself doing, I guess we call them advocacy roles, sort of in the future? Do you enjoy doing? Obviously, you got a bit burnt out with that, but is that something that you still you feel good about and you want to do a bit more of?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think at the moment, because I'm so full, it's full time with Port, so I don't have the time. But in the future, I definitely see myself as being involved. I've had ambassador roles in many different areas over my journey. So yeah, I'm always drawn to any sort of charity that's involved with children as well. That's a big one for me. So yeah, no, when I have more time on my hands again, I definitely like to do something like that. And I've always wanted to do Meals on Wheels. I'm going to do that one day because
Really?
I love elderly people. I don't know what it is. I had beautiful grandparents, and it's just something it's on my bucket list, Andrew. I'm going to do it one day.
That's also that was random. I didn't see that one coming.
I know.
But no, well, you'll have to take all the girls down to a couple of the local retirement villages and have an afternoon tea or something.
And it's great at the moment. My daughter's studying to be an occupational therapist, and she's doing a placement at aged care home at the moment. So she's dealing with sort of dementia patients and everything. And she's got a beautiful temperament, so she's really enjoying that connection and interaction with them too at the moment, which is nice.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And I guess that sort of leads us on to, because I'm cognizant of your time, is sort of, what do you see for yourself down the future? Is obviously you're an important role in Port at the moment, but in terms of, do you have other goals in terms of maybe getting onto board of directors of certain, whether it's football or whatever? Do you have other professional goals where you want to keep expanding, or are you just going to see what comes?
No.
Yeah.
I'm sort of just, it's interesting because I have the opportunity to go on. I'm on a couple of boards already and don't want to. I'm on like the Hall of Fame, governor for the Hall of Fame here. Also, there's another one with the SASI board to give funding to athletes. So yeah, and then also very happy I'm still involved with Basketball Australia. I'm on the Honours and Awards Commission with them. So yeah, I'm just traveling nicely at the moment, I guess, with the balance I have of, still being a mum, working, and then sort of still wanting to give back. So for me, yeah, it's good work-life balance at the moment. Like when we're in season with Port, it's very full on. But you get used to that, and it's fast-paced and lots of deadlines. But I think that's, I don't know, what I'm used to, and it's never boring, never dull, which is nice. So yeah, I love going to work. So for me, at my age, that's very important to me, that I loving what I'm doing at the moment. And
no, we certainly come across as happy.
Yeah, I don't have any other sort of professional goals, because I just living for this for now, really enjoying it, and I hope to be with Port, for long term. And particularly because we have started from scratch, I really want to get to that point of success and see where we land.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, that's what I think us as fans hope for all of the players that brought us so much joy sort of over the years, is that they're happy in retirement, and they're athlete retirement. They're probably busier than they were when they're athletes, but yeah, just that they're happy. And because for a lot of us, watching you guys as athletes was, the highlight of our week, for some of us, because not everyone does, I guess, enjoy their job, unfortunately. And, whether they've got difficult life situations at home, or like you mentioned earlier, there's someone in the family with a horrible illness or something, to just be able to switch on the TV for 2 hours a week and watch your favorite players run around and cheer your team. And you would see it at Port as well. So, people in the cheer squad that might be a little down on their luck in life, but that 2 hours every week, all their problems go away for 2 hours.
It's a form of escapism, Andrew.
Yeah.
It's the best kind. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And that brings me, I guess, to my last question is, these days, do you watch much WNBL? And if you do, are there any players that you really enjoy watching in particular?
Yeah, well, I guess I love how Jade Melbourne plays. I think she's brilliant. Just her energy is amazing, and obviously very talented, and she seems very grounded. And then I can't go past Izzy Bourlays at Lightning. Very excited with what Izzy, her future, because she comes across as very composed and amazing for her age. Had to ended up starting for Lightning last year and no issue. Yeah, no, she's very rounded as well, and I'm sure she'll be a future Opal. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, well, at the time of this recording, for listeners, I'm not sure when they'll be listening to this, but you actually pulled not physically, but your singlet down for the rafters at Adelaide and allowed Izzy to wear that. How did that sort of, without going sort of into too much detail, how did that sort of come about? Was that your suggestion, their suggestion?
Well, I'm good friends with Izzy's mum, Jenny, because she was an Australian netballer. So I've known Jenny for years. And she jokingly said, Izzy's not happy with you because she can't wear number 14 because it's been retired.
No pressure.
And it just got me thinking. It's like, actually, that's a really good point. Like, it's been retired since 2007. And I love the football tradition that a Guernsey is passed on to another player. And you sort of reminisce who's worn that number over the years. And I love, it's a beautiful gesture by basketball to retire your number. But I figure, well, can be retired for a little while and bringing it back. And what better way through Izzy? Look, she doesn't feel any pressure. We made sure that she was comfortable, as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I thought about it before I said, yes, let's do it. And then we asked Izzy, are you comfortable with this happening? And she decided she was. So, yeah, it was a really nice moment with that presentation last week. And I'm just going to enjoy. And it's funny because it's going to be the first time it's in a Lightning singlet because it was always bodysuit in my career.
Yeah.
So it's actually going to be a singlet instead.
Yeah. No, that's nice. And that's an interesting point you make, actually, because it is actually pretty cool when if anyone else has had the chance to walk through football locker rooms and you've got, the locker number 5 and then you've got all the players that that wore that. So that's actually, I hadn't thought about that. That's a really interesting point you make. That's something that I think would also help with the connection of past to current players.
Yeah.
So no, that's really good. Look, thanks so much for your time today. It's been really cool to get to know you and sort of have a chat and shared plenty of lessons for those listening. And even just from your upbringing, like playing with adults at the age of 9 and that sort of stuff, and not playing man to man and all that sort of stuff. That's certainly not an upbringing that probably even kids in Murrayville have now. It's probably still, you could travel to somewhere.
Unfortunately, there's actually no basketball league anymore at home. So
right.
I feel very blessed. That makes me sad. That's, again, really difficult in country areas, Andrew, that they're struggling because everyone leaves the area and then you don't get people wanting to put the time in to keep things going. So I feel very blessed that basketball existed at home. So I could play it. And so no, because it changed my life, made my life amazing.
Yeah, sport has an amazing way of doing that. And it doesn't have to be, I think, for those listening, it doesn't have to be, getting to the heights that yourself's got to. No. It's just good for life, good for life in general, and good for everyone. So, whether it's basketball, football, get the kids involved in the little Auskick games and just let them run amok, and wherever they end up, they end up.
Yeah.
So I think it's great. So thanks once again for coming on. You obviously don't owe us anything, so you didn't have to come on and do this. It's just nice to have you on to share with all the listeners where you're at these days. Maybe you might have got a few extra Port fans from how nice you were out here, and we'll see how you go. We might catch you in a couple of years and see where you're at then, and you can show us at a AFLW Premiership Cup or something. That'd
be nice. That's what Port exists for, Andrew, to win premierships. That's their motto. So no pressure.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Thank you. Enjoy today.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Rach. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. We hope to catch you in the next episode.